You like this. All right, here we are. We're live. Welcome, friends, to Beit. I'm and of course, there's folks coming in late. Would you mind? Actually, I think Rachel's going to. She's got her. Okay. Welcome, everyone, and viewers on the internet to Beit and our adult education series. We're calling "Who is a Person and When Does It Matter?" From the description, our plan is to explore definitions of personhood in Jewish thought, as well as the ramifications of those definitions ramifications that those definitions have for Jewish philosophical debates, contemporary ethical issues. We've decided to kind of co-teach this, which is great. It takes a little bit of the pressure off of each of us, I hope, and also hopefully opens up the door to discussion of these ideas, because I don't feel like lecturing about this kind of stuff is necessarily as productive as discussing it. And I'm excited to learn from Rabbi Jonathan. I should introduce my colleague, Rabbi Jonathan Seidel, who is from Eugene, and who almost certainly knows way more about the especially the more modern philosophical sides of this kind of thing than I do. So I'm excited to learn from you. And we're going to sort of hand it off to one another, and also hopefully make space for your thoughts and your discussion. So if you have questions along the way, feel free to speak up and ask them. And I'm certainly going to make opportunities for some discussion in the course of my teaching, and we'll go from there.
We could go around the room.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, see who's here.
Please.
Rachel.
Phyllis.
Jeff.
Adam.
Mike.
And let's see, there's at least one person joining us on the internet. If you want to introduce yourself, there's a chat bar on the side. You can communicate things to us as well. So you can see.
Welcome.
And if anyone comes to the door, Jeff's got it. Wonderful. Yeah. So just so you know, the sort of roadmap here and in your packets, and this is all available if you're viewing online. You can check this kind of thing out on the Beit website, beitam.org. Today's session is sort of attempting to answer the basic question of what is a person, before we get to the question of who might qualify under that definition. Yeah. What does it even mean to be a person, and defining some key terms. No class next Tuesday. Rabbi Jonathan's going to be out of town. So we'll meet again in 2 weeks to discuss autonomy and heteronomy. If you don't know what those words mean, well, learn in 2 weeks. As well as some other basic philosophical concepts, agency, free will. We'll take another week off. There's going to be a meeting here that night that I don't want to conflict with. We're going to be voting on the designs for our own Kodesh here.
I thought we were voting on what's a person.
There you go. Well, maybe we'll vote on what is in our own Kodesh. And then we have 4 consecutive sessions after that. So we'll discuss human nature. If you're familiar with the term Yetzer and the Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Ra, we'll discuss those things, making tshuva, all those kind of questions of human nature. And then this sort of back half, the back 9 of the class, as it were, we'll cover some contemporary issues. And these aren't totally set in stone, so if there's things that come up in the course of the discussion, I think we can definitely angle towards them. But things we thought of that would be interesting to discuss and learn about in light of the questions we're going to set up are the death penalty. When is it permissible for one person to execute another person, potentially? Euthanasia and suicide. When is it possible for a person to have enough agency over their personhood to take their own life? And lastly, abortion. Obviously a fetus is a sort of and for lack of a better term, a marginal case, I guess. Certainly a boundary case about personhood. So that gets into a really interesting discussion as well that clearly has some contemporary relevance. You have anything else to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that if you haven't heard the general gestalt of this class, it's philosophy of law, in a sense. In 2 words. It's a discussion of how decisions are made in the Jewish community. What is the authority for decision making in terms of Natsana and Halakha? The continuity of notions of personhood are critical. We're not talking here, and I want to answer a very trenchant and important email that came along. Very important.
I was going to address that too.
We're going to talk. We're not discussing here, or it could come up, the history of colonial and dominating notions of personhood. That is, throughout history, when a dominating or colonialist power determines that a slave is not a person, or a woman is not a person, or a child is not a person. So the colonialist narrative and our deconstruction of it is not being addressed fully, but it will come up because that's critical to understanding who's a person in the ancient world, personhood. And who makes decisions about law is critical. For example, women did not render halachic or legal decisions in the ancient world. Pesach din was only given by a sage or rabbi. That is a word of law that is normative for a community. So I want to say the sociological and the current political situation of who is a delicate matter. Throughout history, it is colored by colonialism and the gendered and colonialist discourse that emerges in the last hundreds of years of history writing. So we will deconstruct that at some level, the privileged discourse, let's say that. But in Jewish law, the question who is a person is critical in terms of agency. And we're going to take a look at that. And it's been a wonderful dialogue with my colleague here.
Just realized I wanted something to take up.
Not just a person, but a very teacher. So we'll open it up. And so those are preliminary things. The philosophy of law class. And I've taught a lot of different versions of halakha, introduction to Jewish law. Some more philosophically oriented, some more specifically legally oriented. But this will be kind of an erbuvia, wherever you guys take it, in a sense.
Yeah.
Whatever the people online, we'll see what emerges from text study. It's a delight to be here.
Good. You're very welcome. The only thing I'd add, because I put a little kind of disclaimer in here too, but it reminded me as I was thinking about what we're going to discuss here, of a class back in rabbinical school where we discussed the rabbis had this conception of Torah as like powerful to the point of almost being dangerous. And so it was really important to find the right teacher. So it was a discussion of who is a kosher teacher. Because potentially you could have a teacher that would teach like very good, powerful Torah, but potentially with the wrong intent or in such a way that it could lead to bad consequences. So I would say that this is very potent and potentially dangerous Torah. Like this is
Yes.
the question of person, because it's been, the foundation historically for, like you said, colonialism, white supremacy, like the act of defining who is a person and then excluding people from that.
Yes.
Means you can do all sorts of crazy, awful things to them. But I believe it has the potential also to do tremendous good if it's applied properly and in line with our intuitions about positive moral value of various beings. For example, like you said, like a person's sex or a person's skin color is it's a morally irrelevant characteristic.
Right.
That doesn't, right? We intuit that those factors don't affect your personhood. For another example, at some point we'll consider the personhood of an unborn fetus. But the relevant question isn't then going to be, do we have any moral obligation to that fetus? It's, what are the parameters of our moral obligation? We take it for granted that like we have a moral obligation to every being, regardless of personhood or not.
Right.
So, to that fetus as well as to the mother, right? So, anyway, that was my disclaimer. So I'll jump in and get started teaching from the sources that are on the Sefaria source sheet. They say sources for class number 1. What is a person? If you're following along online and want to get access to this, check the description underneath the video. There's a link to a Sefaria source sheet. You should be able to follow on there. So, to say that any living thing is a person is to say that they are valuable in the sense that they deserve a particular kind of moral consideration. I think specifically within a Jewish context, that derives from a particular verse and a particular understanding of one of the most basic properties of every person. And it's derived from right here in source number 1, Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. And for the sake of bringing these texts out loud into the room, we'll read these out loud as we go around. If it's all right, can we go clockwise? Rachel, can you read source number 1 for us?
I'm happy to read this.
Please.
That was
Yeah, so you got a good one, right?
that was one of my grandmother's favorite verses from the Bible, because
Okay.
to her it meant women were equal to men.
Mm.
So thank you for letting me read that. And God created the human in God's image. In the image of God, God created him. Male and female, God created them.
Yeah, I translated him because the Hebrew pronoun is singular,
Mhm.
but I wanted to be genderate, and that is extremely difficult. So I put him in scare quotes. Yeah, good. So hopefully a familiar text to most folks. It's the essence of our Jewish understanding of what constitutes a person. There's an element of divinity. We're not going to go down exactly what Tselem means here, what we translated here as image. But we can take it for granted that there's some element of godliness in person. It's pretty much a fundamental Jewish tenet.
Mm-hmm.
How do you understand the term human here? God created, in Hebrew, ha-adam. God created the human. How do you understand that? Who's included there? You can jump in. This is not school.
All
You can just...
humans. I mean, to me.
Yeah.
All humans.
Yeah. Good. So maybe like Adam was at something too. Sorry. Yeah.
I mean,
all
yes.
humans.
I mean, it's Adam specifically, but standing in to represent all humans.
Good. Yeah. So it's sort of a species-ish kind of definition, right? It's right. Good. So yeah, understood by Jewish tradition to be coextensive with all of humanity, right?
The Orthodox translates it the earthling.
The earthling. Yeah, I think that's good too.
Adama.
Right. 'Cause,
I like earthling here. It works for me.
You're right. I like that too.
Human also is humus, which is earth.
Yeah, although
Latin.
I think you could argue pretty convincingly that animals are earthlings as well, and that I think it's the particular sense here is what we know as human beings, like Homo sapiens sapiens.
Well, that's going to raise a whole other question. Whether animals are included in the human.
Well, good. Thanks for bringing that up, because that's exactly where I plan to go. Okay. So, understanding that basic tenet that all humans have some element of divinity in them, and that's every human on Earth. What kind of particular moral consideration do we owe a person, kind of capital P person? I'm defining for the sake of the argument that being a person means you're valuable, but what is your value? Source number 2, and Phyllis, if you don't mind reading out loud, is the basis, I think, for it's not going to be obvious. We're going to have to drosh it a little bit to get there, but the basis for human value as it comes into play here. Phyllis, will you read source 2, please?
You shall keep my laws and my rules, by the pursuit of which man shall live. I am the Lord.
Very good. So it's not totally obvious here how we would derive the question of human value, but the key phrase in the Hebrew is v'chai bahem, you shall live by them, or as a result of them you shall live, something like that. And the rabbis of the Talmud take this up in a discussion of what you can, circumstances under which you have to put aside other concerns to save a life. And here it's specifically on Shabbat. And I've sort of had to heavily edit this to get to the relevant parts. Jeff, you're going to want to read source number 3 from the Talmud, Tractate Yoma.
It once happened that Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah were walking on the road, and this question was asked before them. From where is it derived that saving a life overrides Shabbat?
Mm-hmm.
Rabbi Yehuda said that Shmuel said, if I would have been there among those sages who debated this question, I would have said that my proof is preferable to theirs, as it states, and live by them in Leviticus, and not that he should die by them. In all circumstances, one must take care not to die as a result of fulfilling the mitzvot.
Okay, thank you. So the part that I edited out is the responses by Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, who Rabbi Yehuda says that Shmuel, said would have come along and that they were all, in fact, they all agreed that this was the truth, that saving life overrides Shabbat, but his proof was better, and this is the one the Talmud ends up going with. Can anyone explain in their own words the interpretive move that Shmuel makes here?
Oh yeah, if you follow the mitzvot of the let's say the Sabbath,
Mm-hmm.
that's you don't want to endanger yourself by
Good.
doing that.
Sure.
That's the literal, I guess, interpretation.
Right. So he's actually like taking it extremely literally. It says
Right.
you should live by them. No, they should cause you to be alive.
Yeah.
In other words,
Not endangered.
it's also saying explicitly not the opposite. It should under no circumstances ever cause you to be dead.
Yeah.
Right? Good. So
One of the reasons they didn't like the Karaites is the Karaites and other groups fasted on the Sabbath all day long. So there are people that fasted too much and died by fasting. That was actually a historical problem. So chai b'hem, don't live by them.
Right.
Don't starve yourself to death.
Sure.
So, saving a life,
Mm-hmm.
does that mean one's own life or the life of other?
This is a huge area of discussion, and the answer is both. Where that's not exactly where we're gonna go, but yes, both. I mean, just any life. I mean, and obviously, a follow-up question to that as well. How do I prioritize those lives? How do I mine versus others versus others?
One of the great myths of that Christianity has hoisted upon Judaism is that Jews don't save a life on Shabbat in the New Testament. So we do save life on Shabbat. We do use medicine. The question is, what's work on the Shabbat?
Yeah.
What constitutes melacha?
Mm-hmm.
But it's important. The New Testament puts a false image of Judaism that the Pharisees would not save on the Shabbat. Here it is. Pikuach nefesh tochel Shabbat. So that's something in Jewish to overcome that prejudice that the Pharisees would not save a life because of the prejudice of the New Testament picture of the Jews. So here, the rabbis made a point of saying that Pikuach nefesh tochel Shabbat.
Mm-hmm.
You save a life, you save your own life. Now, taking care of a cold, that's another matter, something like that. But to use medicine on Shabbat.
Right. So you used the term. I can't remember who used it first, but that term pikuach nefesh.
That's this.
Yes. Yeah. That's the kind of.
You can break Shabbat. You work as your
Actually, I'm going to write it
doctors. Pikuach nefesh.
Yeah.
Doctors work on the Sabbath. They violate the issue of melacha, of work on the Sabbath to save lives.
Wow.
Nurses, occupational therapists.
And doesn't it also hold even if it's not sure that your life is in danger, it just potentially could be? For example,
Right.
if you're very Shabbat observant, you're still going to take a taxi or get your wife to the hospital when
Yes.
she goes into labor. And her life isn't necessarily in danger.
That's right.
It just potentially could be because childbirth sometimes
That's good.
can
That's
cause
right.
death. Am I correct?
It's possible, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this has all sorts of ramifications. I mean, it's they apply it here to the question of Shabbat, but it's an archetype for a whole principle. Shabbat is one of the most serious mitzvot. Someone who desecrates Shabbat is liable to death penalty according to Torah. So that's why if Shabbat overrides, Kal v'chomer, all the more so, something else, everything else overrides. You should save a life rather than wave the lulav on Sukkot or whatever, So good. So we derive from here that the precedence of human life is essentially built into every mitzvah. It pushes aside saving a life, pushes aside every other concern. And mitzvot are supposed to enable us to, therefore by definition, enable us to live into that image of God, that Selam Elohim-ness to the fullest extent possible, right? Good. So note, since my role here in setting this up is to define terms, note the term here that we're translating as life. Nefesh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. So note, translate it as a life, which in English means like an individual person, right? Good, okay. Nefesh is another biblically derived word, just like Selam Elohim, and it's deployed in the creation narrative, where it's deployed in the creation narrative, and we'll look at it there. It ends up taking on a more technical meaning in Jewish philosophical discussion, which is going to be relevant to us as we go forward. So I kind of want to walk you through the derivation. So in terms of trying to define what is a nefesh, what is a person, a sort of obvious starting place is to find our sort of most common or most closely related neighbor, figure out what makes us different from them. So, namely animals. There's certainly a sense in all sorts of different cultures and across times that humans are different from animals in some way. I think it's been only in the last 150 years or something like that where we've come around to the idea of having any sort of animalness to us at all. But to determine what makes a person, it's instructive to examine how are we different from animals. So let's take a look at the first creation narrative. Source number 4 there. It's a handful of verses from Bereshit, Genesis chapter 1. And just because I pulled this out in isolation, remember the sort of creation schema. On day 1, God separated light from dark. Day 2, the sky was separated. The water and the sky were separated. Day 3, God created dry land and also all the veggies, all the plants and things on the land. Day 4 was the heavenly lights, and here we are on day 5. So I think it's Adam's turn. Can you read source number 4 for us?
Sure. God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures and birds that fly above the earth across the expanse of the sky."
Yeah, keep going. Sorry, I got split there.
God created the great sea monsters and all the living creatures of every kind that creep, which the waters brought forth in swarms, and all the winged birds of every kind. And God saw that this was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fertile and increase, fill the waters and the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning, the 5th day. God said, "Let the earth bring forth every kind of living creature, cattle, creeping things, and wild beasts of every kind." And it was so.
Okay, so I cut it off here in the middle of the 6th day because I wanted to get these 3 instances of the Hebrew term that the JPS translation translates here as living creatures. But that Hebrew term, I bolded it there so you can see it in context, is nefesh chaya. Literally, a chaya is living. Nefesh. Leave that deliberately untranslated for the time being.
Yeah.
It also means animal.
Chaya, right. So these days we call an animal a chaya. Right, it's good.
But not back then.
Well, I've been saying in modern Hebrew as opposed to biblical Hebrew.
Okay.
Yeah, but that actually will come up
Okay.
in about 2 sources from now, sort of interestingly. So good. So when all these various kinds of animals, the birds and the sea creatures and the land animals, they're all called by that same term, nefesh chaya, some sort of living creature, we'll say, but having some kind of nefesh. When the humans are created a little bit later, they're not called by that term. It just says God created Adam, like ha-Adam, right? They don't get that terminology. There is, however, a second creation story. If you go back and read Genesis chapter 2, about 4.5 verses in, it sort of restarts things at the beginning of God's creation. Human beings are created much earlier in the story this time, and they're described as they are in source number 5, Genesis chapter 2, verse 7. You mind, Mike?
Which says, "The Lord God formed the human from the dust of the earth. God blew into his nostrils the breath of life, and the human became a living being."
Okay.
Interesting translation.
Yeah, right? So again lifted from the JPS, except I put the his and scare quotes and degendered things because that's my agenda. But other than that is how JPS translates. And they keep the same living being, instead of living creature, but the word at the end there is the same, nefesh chaya. So evidently, what seems to happen, if you derive a different understanding of this, please do speak up. God shapes the human from matter of some kind, some sort of dust of the earth, afarmina adama, and then there's an act of breath, of blowing what it calls a nishmat chayim, literally a breath of life. Nishima is a breath, a living breath, and then Adam becomes a nefesh chaya. becomes a living being, right?
It doesn't say Nishmat Elohim, but it's
It certainly does not.
But it seems to be a corollary.
Could be. I want to ask these people, what do you make of that breath of, like,
Yeah.
what do you think that is? No wrong answers here.
Right. Yeah, because none of us really own it.
Yeah.
We don't.
Well, perhaps the animus, the soul, the spirit,
Okay.
the consciousness that drives all matter. You know, I mean, drives our body,
Yeah.
all thought, emotion,
Mm.
bodily functions.
Okay. Now, admittedly, this is, modern source criticism sees that this is a different author's hand at work than the first one. But assuming we didn't know that, there's something notable here in that nothing else seems to get this Nishmat Chaim, right?
Yeah, everyone else is just created.
Yeah, all these other animals are
Yes.
they're just living things, as if they were just sort of made that way. It's only the human beings
Mm-hmm.
that get this,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, I mean, we don't know what that is. Yeah, we need more information, but I think that's notable. So, okay. Note also that the Nefesh Chaya, like if there's anything that's like, and we'll talk about soul in a second, if there's anything that sort of maps onto the, it's a Platonic idea, right? It's a Greek philosophy, the idea of a soul is separate from body. It's the Nishmat Chaim, it's the breath of life, not the Nefesh. Right? That seems to be a descriptor of the creature. It just, it becomes a thing. It's not the thing itself. Does that kind of make sense?
There's a lot of discussion whether the Hellenistic is already influencing this.
In the Bible.
Yes. In
Interesting.
other words, that there may be a Hellenistic Hebraic confluence already. That Genesis may reflect that, the Greek influence already. Well, we used to think it was, they were completely separate. But it may already reflect the division that you alluded to.
So I believe it. I'm sure there's smarter people out there who are thinking about this. And that seems plausible. I've always been under, sort of taught that this is pre-Hellenistic.
Of course.
Yeah, okay.
So could
So I was working under that
for those of
assumption.
us who aren't like Hellenistic mavens.
Yeah.
You
The
unpack
dating of the
Please, 'cause I'm
book of
not allowed to ask those
Genesis
questions.
might be later than we thought.
Right,
If it's,
but what's the Hellenistic influence you're referring to?
what I'm referring to is Plato.
The soul part,
Soul and body and
two separate things.
and then Aristotle's notion that wouldn't reflect Aristotle, but it might reflect an earlier Greek notion of a division that Rabbi Phil just referred to. That this might not be indigenous to Hebraic thought. Okay, that's
Right.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Indigenous to Near Eastern thought. Open to debate, because what's the date of Genesis? Nobody's quite sure.
Depends who you ask, yeah.
It's an addition to the priestly materials. That's the 7th or 6th century BC, or is it the time of the monarchy? It depends on how you date Genesis.
Right.
And the conceptualization of the human being in the 6th century BC is different than 400 or 500 years before, Homeric times. That's all I'm saying. I did a lot of work on the Hellenistic Hebraic thought business.
Yeah.
Nobody's sure what to date this, but this already shows that, the human soul is different. And the animal is different.
So
Right.
there was a Greek concept of a body-soul division.
Yeah, early, yeah.
And there's some question here, does the biblical author who
Right.
seems to be describing something that looks to us like a soul,
Is it?
do they have that in mind? Or is this, their own thinking about how this works?
Right.
We're gonna leave that unanswered because we don't really know for now.
If I could just say, the first one, someone pointed out, it uses the term B'Tselem Elohim, in God's image.
Right.
And then here, there's no mention of
That's
in
right.
God's image.
That's right.
And I can't remember the exact phrasing, but I know you'll know what I mean, that, we're supposed to carry like in one pocket.
Yeah,
ashes. What is that? Just say,
Afar ve'efer, like your dust and ashes.
One says dust and ashes, the other says the whole world was made for you.
right?
It's,
And
the
I mean,
mantra.
isn't this kind of sort of like, it's telling us we're both.
Yeah.
We're a spark of the divine, and the world was created
Mhm.
for us. But at the same time, let's not get too big for our britches. We're
That's
also part of creation, like
That's
those
right.
other
Right.
nefesh chaya
Right.
out there.
The interesting thing, are we also nefesh chaya?
Well, we certainly have that within us.
So this says yes.
Yeah.
It says we became nefesh chaya as a result of this.
It's different than the other story.
That's the
Right,
part of
okay.
us that's, not the world was created for us.
Right.
We're just, we need to be a little humble here.
You mentioned, animated notion, everything's animated.
Right.
So hierarchy and animation.
I don't think we're going to get like a.
That's not what I was referring to.
Oh, you're referring to
Animus.
animus, not anima. Okay.
Yeah, folks are going to have, if you use terms like that,
Yeah, please define them because we don't.
do me a favor too. 'Cause
I certainly-
Yeah.
the non-Hebrew ones, at least, especially. So, good. So, I don't think we're going to get like a very clear answer just from the biblical text because this was not written as a philosophical treatise. These were stories, and from different, it was never designed to have coherence to it. But these are Jewish sacred texts, and as Jewish ideas of personhood developed, this is the basis. So that's why it's important, I think, to start here. In terms of making sense and this is sort of out of time in terms of the time progression through, but this particular commentator lays it out really nicely for us. Source number 6 here from the Seidel. That's when you're a really big shot rabbi, you get an acronym name, right? So this is Rabbi Samuel Shmuel David Luzzatto. Seidel.
You're the Ramfab.
Yeah, we played this game in my we played
Bill Bressler.
we played this game in my brother's school class.
Howard? No.
Eric. Yeah.
Your dad is Eric?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're the
you figured it out.
Ramfab, but
We played this game in my Beit Midrash class last year because we did sort of our own kind of Talmud on ourselves. We reacted to some stuff and they commentated on it, and everybody got a rabbi name. So everyone got to work their initials around, and we got some really good ones.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I don't know, it's for kids. Okay, so Seidel, Shmuel David Luzzatto, yeah, he lived in Italy in about the first half of the 19th century, but his dates are 1800, 1865, so very much in the modern era, I would say. And he explains the connection between three terms that commonly get translated or are translated as soul. Two we've encountered already, nefesh and neshama. And one more we're going to encounter, ruach. So I think do you want to read or do you want to pass it to Rachel?
I'll read.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and read number 6 then?
Okay, the derivation of the word nefesh is from neshima, breath, and the word is the opposite of neshef, blow. Thus we find in Job 41:13, quote, his nefesh kindles coals, the implication of which is his breath and the air from his mouth. So too, neshama and ruach. Their derivation is the inhalation and exhalation of air, which is the mainstay of human life and all life upon the earth. And chaya, living, is the explanation of nefesh, which is to say, the being that inhales and exhales air and by so doing lives. In the customary language is to say the word nefesh by itself, referring to a man, as in Leviticus 4:2, when a nefesh sins.
Indicating clearly that's a person.
Yeah. And nefesh chaya when referring to other animals. In other words, it is a breathing being that has life but no more, since man has other virtues, speech and intelligence and other characteristics that are not found in other animals.
Thank you. And like Jeff was pointing out, I think nefesh chaya is even further short today to just chaya.
We're going to talk about Seidal's 18th century point of view.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously he's not, I don't know if they understood, the process of photosynthesis and the way plants, take in carbon dioxide and give out, they do breathe, as it were. I don't know if they knew that then or not.
They obviously hadn't heard of the Rainbow Bridge, right? Isn't that the bridge where your pets go?
Oh, sure.
When you say characteristics not found, and now we know animals have more characteristics.
Right. So remember, this is a first half of the 19th century. I think this is probably about 1850 when he was writing.
That's 50 years ago.
Yeah, but he's got it. He's got most of it, right? And then we have some differences we can pick, but he links all these three terms together that we commonly understand as meaning soul. Neshama, which literally means breath, it's related to neshima. Nefesh, which is admittedly a stretch to get neshama, but it is like nashaf, to blow, and that's pretty close. And ruach, which normally means wind or something like spirit even. So, he's saying they're all related to this inhalation, exhalation of air, mainstay of life. And so a chaya, a nefesh, which is chaya, living, that means it's doing this inhalation, exhalation. And we understand, anytime we read nefesh elsewhere in Bible, we generally speaking understand that to mean a person. Okay.
Can you just clarify, because
Yeah.
nefesh, breath,
Mm-hmm.
the chaya, living,
Yeah.
animals breathe.
Right.
Okay. I know he explained the distinction, but I'm not getting it.
He's immediately going to the Greek.
Yeah.
The animals really don't have the same intelligence we do.
Yeah.
So this is the distinction between the noetic intelligence and the non-noetic
Yeah.
of the Greeks. So you already have a lot of Greek thinking implicit and then later made explicit in rabbinic thought.
Mhm.
Certainly Kabbalistic and Zohar, as we're going to see in the Zohar.
So he's just making a statement. He's not justifying or explaining it.
No, he's making, and in the 16th century, they called them beasts.
Yeah.
In-
Right. We just
Yeah,
assume.
le bête,
Right.
right? The bête and beasts, and that's a pejorative term, right?
Yeah.
Not intelligent, it's just a savage beast. And that gets deconstructed by the 19th century. And Jane Goodall has put an end to all that with her research, right? I think for good, about the quote higher apes, right?
Yeah.
You know, with the higher apes, which is
Right.
an interesting term.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
well, but at this point, he's still accepting medieval notions that
Mhm.
animals are not intelligent.
Right. Right.
He just
And it's somehow our additional traits, our speech and intelligence, as he points out here, and presumably other things that are what make us different. Like obviously we know now, like, yeah, dolphins communicate with each other, right? So speech is not as much of a unique
birds,
thing, right?
birds.
Intelligence, there are primates that use tools. Like we know that now. But from where he's at,
Right, typical.
right, and this helps to explain sort of backwards in time how Jewish thought has understood differences between humans and animals. Okay, so this is all kind of really demonstrate the idea that the soul is separate from the body. Isn't really native to Jewish text. I don't think that it was definitely Philo, I think, who took that idea and ran with it. It makes its way into Jewish thought from Greek. I mean, the actual provenance is not so much important to this, but that has always been my understanding. And you can start to see a shade of this already in rabbinic texts from the post-temple period, and that's why I brought Nida here. Oh, you're already there. Good. Source number 7. So this is again from the Talmud tractate Nida, and tell me what you think about what they're talking about here, please.
The sages taught there are 3 partners in the creation of a person. The Holy One, blessed be He, and his father and his mother. His father emits the white seed from which the following body parts are formed: the bones, the sinews, the nails, the brain that is in its head, and the white of the eye.
Yeah, the white parts. Duh.
His mother emits red seed from which are formed the skin, the flesh, the hair, and the black of the eye.
I don't really get that one, but sure, okay.
And the Holy One, blessed be He, inserts into him a spirit, ruach,
Mhm.
a soul, nefesh, his countenance, eyesight, hearing of the ear, the capability of speech of the mouth, the capability of walking with the legs, understanding and wisdom. And when a person's time to depart from the world arrives, the Holy One, blessed be He, retrieves his part, and he leaves the part of the person's father and mother before them.
So this to me is almost exactly my understanding of the Platonic ideas of the soul. Right, it's pretty close that everything that makes up the physical you is just stuff. That's what you get from your mom and dad, right?
And notice the colors.
You're right.
The white of semen, the blood from the mother. How they had to understand how that reproduces itself in different forms, and it's kind of forkata,
Yeah, but
it's
right. From my point of
the
view.
ancient people,
Sure.
they looked at colors and they looked at the fabric of the human being. This is what they came up with. It's pretty close to some Iranian medicine treatises. So the Persians have similar notions as well as the Greeks. There's interpenetration between ancient Iranian thinking about the nature of medicine in the person as there is with the Greeks. Pretty close, not the same. Iranian medical texts, the Talmud's as much influenced by them as they are by the Greeks, because they're in Babylonia. It's a Persian world, Zoroastrian medicine. And this is a really interesting text. And it says sechel here, by the way.
Yeah.
Bina, it doesn't say Chochmah, it says sechel. Bina
but it translated as wisdom.
as wisdom is sechel, which is very interesting here.
Yeah.
I thought wisdom was Chokmah, so
It
what
is.
is that?
Here, it doesn't have, well, there's wisdom here. It says, v'haloch raglayim v'bina v'haskel. But so legs, understanding, and wisdom. Walking, understanding, and wisdom all lumped together.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I would again I'd be wary of, you're like when the translation says wisdom, loading your understanding of what wisdom means in English onto the original Hebrew, because the translation is as much interpretation as anything, and that's not necessarily like the writer didn't necessarily mean your concept of wisdom.
Since it could be translated sensibility or comment or
sure, right. There's a lot of plausible
word.
So I think trying to understand it as a technical term here is an error, because again, this is not a philosophical treatise. This is a story of in a Breit, right? So, but it again sort of conveying the same sense, and actually along along what you were saying with the colors and how that's like it's a certain kind of science that makes a certain amount of sense. My favorite, like the ancient answer to why the sky is blue, is because there's water up there. I mean, duh, right? Obviously, like there's lower waters and there's upper water. Like I can see it; it's blue. Like it makes obvious sense in a certain way. So
that's already 400 or 500 BCE.
Yeah.
Most anthropologists of the Bible, there's a famous book on the religion of ancient Israel. There's no proof in the Hebrew Bible that body and soul are separate, really separate. That's what I was going to say. Hints in that text, in that other text, hints. But most scholars feel there was, the body and the soul were together. There was no separate. You went to Sheol when you died. So the anthropology is one of a unity of body and soul, not a separation. That other text hints at a separation, but most scholars feel there was, when you die, it's like the Chinese notion, there's a hun and a po soul. So it goes with the body.
Right. Good. Okay, so I want to move towards wrapping up and get to my last source, because I want to turn things over to you. One more question? Yeah?
What can we understand by these two different words, ruach and spirit, and soul and nefesh? What's the difference?
I think you're not going to quite understand a technical, precise distinction here, because this is I don't think the Gemara is using those terms in any sort of technical sense.
Kabbalah is going to make something of it.
Absolutely, and so is Ibn Ezra in a second.
Right, but he used two words, so he must have intended something by using two words. Right. Do we have any idea what?
That is a very, very Jewish way of reading this. So, but yes, mostly I'm just trying to build up that there are three different words that we're sort of throwing around that means something like soul, even if we don't necessarily precisely understand them.
Okay.
Right. Okay. To get the most precise understanding, I think probably my favorite commentator, Abraham Ibn Ezra, from Spain in 1089. That's the 11th century.
11th to 12th
century. 11th, early 12th century. So Abraham Ibn Ezra brought rationalism and Neoplatonic philosophy into his interpretation, and he wrote commentaries on the Tanakh and a number of other works. His commentary on Tanakh is among the most famous, but he brings this rational thinking and these kind of Greek philosophical ideas into his commentary. And he wasn't a philosophy writer, like he never wrote a philosophical treatise. He sort of worked it in bits and pieces. But this section, and I quote it because it's a very long comment, was from his commentary on the book of Ecclesiastes, Kohelet in Hebrew. And I included the verse just so you get a sense, although that's not actually what prompted him to make this comment on the verse is not our topic here today. He was trying to resolve what he understood, what seemed to be contradictions in Kohelet. Namely, in this case, he's saying what they translate as vexation, kaas, it can also be like anger.
Mhm.
Here it seems to be saying anger is good. There's another verse, a couple of verses later, that says anger is bad. So he's trying to be in the business of like, well, how can it say two things? Is it good or is it bad?
Right.
And there's a number of things like that. But it prompts him to go on this sort of whole discourse to make this resolution where he talks about our three terms, nefesh, ruach, and neshama, and actually gives them useful definitions that'll be good working definitions for us. I don't remember whose turn it is to read. Phyllis, is it your turn?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead. This is a long one, so
Oh,
Yeah.
you want the big one? Okay.
yeah, the big one, number 9 there.
Okay. Vexation is better than revelry.
Mhm.
Medical men have already indicated that man possesses 3 souls, nefashot.
Yeah.
One is a vegetative soul,
Mhm.
that is to say, just as in the vegetative kingdom, as in grass, plants, trees, there is a power we call soul, responsible for growth and reproduction. So man possesses a similar power. This soul grows in strength for a specified time. Its main attribute is corporal desire, and it requires the intake of food for its realization. The second soul is animal soul. It uses the facilities
Faculties, yeah. Mhm.
of faculties of the 5 senses and is responsible for the power of motion, moving animals, and man from place to place. The third soul, which only man possesses, is referred to as neshama.
Mhm.
This is the faculty of reason and distinguishes between truth and falsehood. The second soul is midway between the other 2 souls.
Okay, I'm gonna pause you right there. We gotta do some processing of what's set up here. So he's laying out this kind of 3-part division of classes of souls, right? That map on to, essentially 3 classes of beings. One, the what he calls the vegetative soul, that the vegetative kingdom has. Animals grow and they eat and they live for a while and they reproduce, but they don't really do anything beyond that, right? At least from our 11th century perception of them. So there is some sort of nefesh there, some sort of soul to them that is of a most basic level. Animals seem to be a level above that. They get around, they move from place to place. And so they have something like an animal soul that enables them to use their senses to hear and see and taste, and also to move around the way animals don't. And we understand that humans have both of those things because we grow and we reproduce and we take in food, but we also use our senses and get from place to place. But there's something else, a third soul, which here he calls neshama. It's the faculty of reason. Distinguishes between truth and falsehood. And the setup here, the second soul, midway between the other 2 is a setup for what's coming next. So he's going to take that. That's essentially, he says this comes from medical men, but that wasn't my translation. I borrowed someone else's translation for this. He's essentially saying this is what the Greeks say. This is the rationalist philosophy.
Actually, it's pretty close to Aristotle here.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
Pretty close. Not exactly. But
Sure.
Pretty close to Aristotle.
But what Ibn Ezra is going to do is take these sort of 3-part distinction and frame it in terms of a Jewish religious understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to map our terms, nefesh, ruach, neshama, onto that Greek terminology. So Jeff, can you pick up where Phyllis left off with in the middle there, in the middle paragraph?
God endowed man with a rational faculty, which is also referred to as lev, in order to actualize every soul's potential in due time. God also provided him with mitzvot to make it possible to maintain everything in proper proportion.
Okay, pause there again. So another important word that is another one of those Bible words that comes up all the time, lev, which means heart. Remember in the ancient world, they understood the heart as the seat of thought.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't really understand what brains were for. They thought you did your thinking with your heart, which where we get a lot of our best metaphors. Yeah, we get a lot of our best metaphors from there, right? But Ibn Ezra understands that God gave us that additional capability, that rational capability, and also he has to interrelate this with mitzvot. We're going to get to in a future class, a sense of commendedness and how is a person supposed to live in response to these commandments. That's part of this framework as well. So we're not going to quite go there now, but as he said, it makes it possible to maintain everything in proper proportion. I don't know exactly what that means, but he clearly thinks mitzvot have a role to play here. Adam, go ahead and take us home. If you don't mind. Now, although
the three souls are alluded to by one all-embracing name, we shall distinguish the three different powers of the soul by three specific names.
and I should say that the one all-embracing name, we call them, as the word he's been using for soul this whole time has been nefesh. We call them all nefesh, but they also have different names which are not nefesh. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Neshama, Ruach, and Nefesh. This will avoid undue elaboration on the various qualities associated with each of the three souls. Thus, the term Nefesh refers to man's desire to eat, to be merry, and to indulge in sexual pleasures. The name Ruach alludes to our sensations that stir feelings for mastery and self-glorification. Neshama denotes our rational faculties.
Good. So he's taking basically those three levels, the vegetable, animal, and human souls, and saying our words map onto those. Nefesh, that like back in Bereshit, that basic essential just livingness that we share in common with animals, that's nefesh. So that makes sense. Ruach, that's something like a spirit. If nefesh is our most basic desires for food, sex, whatever, ruach stirs feelings for mastery and self-glorification. It desires things like honor, right? And
early medieval notions of ego.
Good, I'm glad you said that word. And neshama, reason, so wisdom, I would say, speech. This maps pretty perfectly onto Freud's id, ego, superego. Yeah, absolutely. And he goes on, Ibn Ezra does, and obviously, better part of 1,000 years before Freud, basically describes what Freud talks about. Man is pulled in opposite directions. His nefesh pulls him one way towards animalistic desire, and his neshama, his sense of wisdom and rationality and right from wrong, pulls him in the other one. And the reason, remember, it said the second soul is midway between. The ruach is there in the middle, the ego mediating between the two. That's basically the rest of his comment here, which I didn't give you. So the neshama, as the I would say important part of the soul, the part that makes us specifically human, has become, I think, essentially the doctrine. As we think about what is a person, the answer is it's our neshama. It's our whatever is extra for us over and above animals. And for the most part, in the understanding of the classic sources, that's our rationality. That's our ability to do that higher level reflection and processing. I included a couple other little notes that I thought were relevant, but I'm going to skip over them for now. These are a couple of tidbits from the morning Siddur. And as you can see, like when we wake up in the morning, and these are some of the first things a person says, Moda ani lefanecha melech ha'kayosha hechazarta bi nishmati, my neshama, chemla, right? I offer thanks that my soul, and here, like it's clearly talking about the personness of me, has been returned. The word that the liturgy uses, neshama, right? So we've sort of moved from the basic understanding of nefesh, incorporated these other words through the use of and the influence of Greek philosophy and that body-soul duality, come up with, I think, an authentically, organically Jewish idea of what makes a person. It's our neshama. So personhood as a concept is important to halachic discussion and decision-making because the questions it raises define the parameters of our moral obligations. What makes a person? As distinct from an animal, it's that reflective human consciousness. We think about what we do or don't do. And for a person needs a reason for what they do. There are standards of behavior. With that, I think that concludes a survey of classical sources.
Wonderful.
You can take a pause for questions if you want or anything like that, but then I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan to take us through something more advanced. What he's got.
Well, I also wanted to say we haven't talked about the Greek root of the word persona as mask, which is something that one can use for dissimulation and falsity or theatrics. The Greeks understood you could put on different personalities, right? You can, and some of us have been in theater, we can do that, right? So what's authentic to the self might be different than the mask one wears in a given moment. That comes up in philosophy, comes up in theater, discussions of religious responsibility. It comes up now with trans people, which is the body you're given, you might change. There's a lot of interesting issues around persona that we can unpack during the class. But it's a philosophical problem that's ongoing. You know, what's the personality that a male adopts as he's being raised by his parents, as opposed to a female on a bifurcated level? Okay, that's another huge topic today on gender, nature, culture, raising kids, you know, and then trans kids, more androgynous children. What kind of personality did they adopt? Interested now in that because I'm dealing with that. So the persona issue is a corollary of our discussion of nefesh and neshama, I think. But we'll bring it up more. But thank you so much. This is a great overview.
Thanks. It was really fun to put together.
And you cover a lot of ground. There's a lot here.
Yeah.
Wow. So you can see it does map very nicely, the three, onto the Aristotelian notion. And I just wanted to bring up the vegetable soul from it, which has been explored by many neuroscientists and people in anatomy who say that we actually have our vegetable soul is cultivated by eating plants and smoking pot and taking herbs that actually activate our vegetable soul. Michael Pollan's book, and many people have said that our ancestors, you know, have used hallucinogens and herbs to activate that which is already incipient in us. Just like somehow by eating meat, and by the way, I like meat, you're activating, we can unpack this too, by eating meat, you're activating your beastly soul. So people that eat a lot of meat might act more like beasts. Is that true or not? Are they cultivated? Are they more civilized because they eat meat? You see, that debate. There are vegetarians who say, no, when you eat too much meat, you activate the animal soul, and it's not a good thing. And you act more like a beast. So we can discuss that and the rabbinic notions that somehow the beast soul, the animal soul, is not a good thing to cultivate, right? Because it's base. It's quote base. The vegetable soul, Michael Pollan's book, is that by smoking pot or sheesh, taking hallucinogens, you're actually activating that which is vegetable in you, and you're more like a plant. Okay. And so Aristotle basically said that 2,500 years ago. You are what you eat. Yeah. And what you consume, what you smoke, or what you inhale. You don't want to be inhaling fragrances because that might change your brain.
What do I eat to activate my neshama?
That's.
Oh, okay.
What's that? Well, by the logic we're following, you would be a cannibal.
Yeah, you eat toilet. Yeah, but what diet you do to cultivate the higher noetic self is
you eat other people to cultivate. I think we can only take this analogy.
It was your idea. No, the Greeks didn't support cannibalism. It's very funny. That's right. So in order to cultivate, you have to become a cannibal. Well, some cultures it's true. You'd eat your ancestors. Sure.
You'd absorb their power, right?
Correct. Yeah. So
some religions also follow that.
Sure. So I want to unpack that at some point in the class about persona and about the vegetable, animal, and then the higher soul. But the Shama seems to have grown up also to be integrated with the noetic, right? So by the time of Aristotle, you have right? Nous is the higher soul connected to God. Is the divine soul. Animals don't have it. Okay.
So noetic.
So this is what we use.
It's parallel to neshama.
We have an Institute of Noetic Sciences in the USA, right? Founded. Ram Dass was involved. I used to be part of that. I used to do for many years. I went to the Institute of Noetic. What is Noetic Sciences? It's consciousnous studies. It's brain studies, meditation. It's all thousands of people involved in Noetic studies. It comes from the Greeks. It's the higher divine self, right? The nous. That animals don't have that according to this system. We can debate that, right? We could debate whether a chimp or a higher ape has a higher soul. If you look into the eyes of a chimp or an ape, I think you can see intelligence. They're certainly thinking like, this person's really dumb. You know, they're looking at you. I think we have a lot in common with gorillas, chimps, and orangutans and all that. But the issue of the noetic self, the neshama, that we can talk, that's what we're going to talk about in this class. Can you obligate an animal to a mitzvah? Generally not. Can you ask a dog to behave in a certain way over a few years of training the dog? You know, is a dog obligated to perform a mitzvah or behave in a certain way in your house? A cat, you know, we can talk about that. So the noetic thing really seems to have gotten into medieval Jewish thought. So the neshama is equated with the higher divine self, that which is God within you. That's I assume would be the Ruach Elohim, right? Or the nefesh, the neshima as a divine activating force. So that seems to be influenced by the Greeks. So I just wanted to say that. There's a lot more to say. I'm going to move on to a Kabbalistic text, which follows perfectly on Rabbi Ibn Ezra.
Right.
So take a look at the Sifra Ditznuta, Zohar. You have that? God breathed the soul of life. You have the Sifra Ditzniuta from the Zohar. The latter strata of the Zohar, like 14th century, maybe 15th. Zohar is a classic work of Jewish mysticism. My friend Rabbi Dr. Orna Trigaboff teaches in Australia, just did an entire 2-day workshop on animals and souls at the Rabbinic Conference. I thought, how timely. She teaches a class on soul and Kabbalah, an entire course. She has a PhD in Kabbalah. An old friend of mine in the Jewish Renewal Movement happens to be a pretty amazing teacher on Kabbalah. So I want to read this text with you and explicate it. This is a mystical text, and it deals with the stuff we just dealt with. And God breathed the soul breath of life. Now, how does she translate soul breath? Nishmat Chayim into his nostrils, the human became a living soul. Nefesh Chaya. God said, bring forth the land, a living soul creature. Nefesh Chaya, cattle and creeping thing, the animals of the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Right? It was tov.
We got that.
Right. God's salvation is through human beings. And then Psalm says, God's salvation, Yeshua, is through human beings and animals. One is part of the other. The animal is part of a human. So not only are we have an animal soul, but it's actually salvific. It will bring Messiah. So that's an interesting turn in logic or in rhetoric that the mystical teachers are teaching us. I'm going to take that apart as well. Whenever the person brings from yourselves an offering to God, you'll bring an offering to the cattle, herd, and sheep. So from yourself, from your nefesh, from you. Because behema animal is part of a person. When the lower human being came down, so let's stop there. So one thought of scholars about sacrifice is that they're actually bringing part of themselves when they bring their animal. That we have animal in us, and this is the animal part of us that we're putting out we value the animal, right? It's our flock. It's valuable to us. It's money. But on the other hand, it's also very close to us. So the sacrificial system of Korban is bringing close yourself to God through your animal, your cow, your sheep, or your goat. And if you're poor, you bring rain, mincha. So that's an interesting concept that you're somehow bringing part of yourself through the animal. And it's all salvific. It's something that God expects of us to bring korban. And I'd like to hear, and then because behema animal is part of a person, right? When I hear people use the term, they're acting like a bunch of animals, the New York thing, I heard it growing up a lot. I felt that was insulting to animals, maybe not to humans, but
Yeah, I heard it in Yiddish too.
Yeah, Viltachaya. I was never called a Viltachaya except a few times.
Don't smack. You're chewing like a behemoth.
Well, yeah, I mean, we all might degenerate into animal behavior at times. But here, it's a Viltachaya was not a good term to call your kid a wild beast. Mostly reserved for boys and some girls. So, and it's pejorative to animals. It's insulting to God's creatures. When the lower human being came down with a supernal image, it had two spirits from two sides, one from the right, one from the left. The right side of the neshama, on the left, the nefesh chaya. So that Zohar says we have this divine image from above, a supernal image, and one of it is a nefesh chaya. Now you get really interesting. After the sin of Adam, interesting point, at the sin of Adam, the nefesh chaya, living soul, spread leftwards. They spread and became disembodied energies. So no longer the nefesh chaya became disembodied. And what would that mean?
The Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara.
So now
It split into, it bifurcated.
bifurcated, the
inclinations.
left side, the right side split off, and they have disembodied energies. That's very dangerous. So we have to be wary of the energies in the universe that our morality then would be able to embody those energies in a positive way. But now the Kabbalah says they're out there. The nefesh chaya is not just embodied in animals and humans; it's disembodied as well. So this is a really interesting concept in Kabbalah about the I would say the impetus for morality around the splitting off of the nefesh chaya in Zohar.
There's no mention of ruach here.
No,
Like there's no sort of Freudian ego mediated.
no. In fact, ruach by the Middle Ages, ruach has a negative connotation. It's ghosts. By Reb Zalman, my teacher, would not say Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu ruach haolam. I like that spirit of the world.
Sure.
I like it. My contemporaries like it. I use it. Spirit, God is the spirit of the universe. Fine. But he wouldn't use it because in his Hasidic world, ruach was a ghost. He would never call God a ghost. It had that connotation. By the Middle Ages, Sefer Hasidim and other works in the Middle Ages, you would say ruchin are ghosts, or spirit, disembodied spirits with a pejorative notion. They're not happy ghosts, right? So ruchin was already, they started to see ruach as negative, as disembodied or spirits with personalities that were disembodied. That's
Would the goal then be reunification of our nefesh chaya and our neshama?
Nefesh chaya, yes. I think so.